Welcome, everyone, to this collaborative event with the Addicts Mom and TreeHouse Recovery. My name is Kim, and tonight we'll be talking with BenM. Ben is military outreach for TreeHouse, and with a great history of serving the United States of America. He is also a person in long-term recovery, and tonight he'll be speaking with us about how he overcame obstacles created due to his addiction and using a few different personal growth tactics. Ben, we're looking forward to what you'll be sharing tonight. So if you're ready, we're ready to hear from you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Addict's Mom, for giving me an opportunity to share my story and provide some insight. And hopefully, I can change the perspective or add some an outside perspective to um, individuals that is going through some hardships with a loved one. So I'll go over my background, and then, like Kim said, what I've been doing now, and then I'm changing the optic a little bit, where I'm going to focus on, how my mom and my dad was, viewed me as I was going through my struggles as well. Um, so I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. Um, Loving family, no really traumatic events occurred during my childhood and my adolescent years. Um, I started drinking and recreational drugs in high school, and I never stopped. However, there are periods of times that it fluctuated to consuming my life, and then there's times that I was in denial that it was fluctuating, it was controlling my life. I was able to receive a Division I college soccer scholarship to the Bowling Green State University, where I played 3 years of college soccer. During that time, my alcoholism um, took off. Um, However, I continued to be functional, and that's what I thought it was okay, right? My alcoholism, but I was still making the grades. I was still playing soccer, so nothing catastrophic was happening. But alcoholism continued to impact me. After graduating college, I enlisted into the United States Army. In 2011, I had the opportunity to earn my Green Beret, and that's what I did. And from 2011 till this year, I have been in the military. So I served 16 years. 14 and a half of those years, I battled with addiction and suicidal ideations. I've been deployed 8 times to the Middle East. I speak 2 additional languages, and I've had numerous accolades and numerous courses up in Washington, D.C. And I say that not to brag or boast about what my accomplishments have or what accomplishments I've made, but to really hit home that uh, the disease of addiction, we're not immune. No one is immune to that. And oftentimes it can consume you and uh, take control of your life. In 2016, after coming home from a deployment, I decided to, with fear of the stigma of asking for help through the military, I decided to go and check myself into a detox. 2 week long detox, which equaled 2 week or 2 months of sobriety on the back end. And then I went right back into it. And for the next 4 years, I really struggled with addiction. It destroyed my relationships with my family. It destroyed my relationships with my loved ones, my significant others. It distanced my relationship with my son. It hindered my ability to be the best Green Beret I could be. And I was in denial for the entirety of it. All I thought about was, well, nothing's really bad happening. And for alcohol, it wasn't where I was triggered. I didn't have a trigger. If something good happened, the solution was to drink. If something bad happened, the solution was to drink. So it's hard for me to sit there and say there's certain times that I I used alcoholism as a coping mechanism, but alcoholism was a part of my life. And in 2020, I decided to risk the military repercussions and raise my hand through the military. My command was receptive, um, and I ended up going to a 30-day inpatient program. After that inpatient program, not equipped with the tools, not equipped with the coping mechanisms, and definitely not equipped with the understanding and the knowledge of how powerful a community is, I stayed sober for 18 months. By sheer determination, I was clean for 18 months. During that time, I was still miserable. My thought was, well, if I take alcohol out of the equation, everything's going to be great. I'm going to be able to handle life stressors. I'm going to have different coping mechanisms. My relationships are going to flourish. My job is going to, continue to rise. I'm going to be a better father, a better son. And none of those happened because I wasn't equipped with the tools and the understanding of what I needed to do. During that 18 months, my solution to that was I got on some antidepressants. So when I got on antidepressants for the first couple months, it worked. I was able to handle life stressors. I was able to handle stress at work, stress at home. Um, but when it stopped working, about 4 months into that, I stopped taking my antidepressants. And that's when things got dark. I still continued to stay sober, but my thoughts became darker and darker. My suicidal ideations became more frequent. My self-esteem significantly dropped. Um, and middle or early of last year, I was dealing with some family trauma, and I decided to make the choice of to ingest THC at night. That was my coping mechanism. Against the rules, not allowed in the military, but I made that choice. So I'm accountable. That's one thing I want to focus on is accountability, is I am accountable for my choices that I've made. During that, when the command found out that I was um, making an improper decision, they drug tested me. And for 7 days after that, I relapsed. Now, that first day that I decided to drink, again, that was my choice. I drank because I had the guilt, the shame of failing that drug test. The next morning, I had the guilt and shame that I wasted 18 months, that I no longer had to say, hey, listen, I had 18 months of sobriety. And that continued to drive me deeper and deeper. And on the fifth day, I actively tried to kill myself drinking. Upon leaving the hospital, I was able to go to my behavioral health command, and they informed me of TreeHouse recovery. I said, okay, I need help. I know I can't stop by myself. I'll go. For the next 2 days, I still drank. So that right there, that's how heavy and that's how powerful this disease is. An individual like myself who's getting out of the hospital because he almost died because of drinking still can't stop drinking without help. I was able to go to Treehouse Recovery in Costa Mesa, California for 3 months. And when I returned, I thought everything was going to be great. I thought, well, my rock bottom already happened. I failed a drug test. I relapsed. I left the hospital. That's my rock bottom. And boy, was I wrong. During when I returned back to Tennessee in 1 week, a calendar week, 5 days, my ex-wife made some allegations and I spent a day in jail. The following day, the military informed me that I was going to be separated from the military of 16 years. And then the following day, I was informed that on paper that the government does not see me as a Special Forces Green Beret. So they revoked my Special Forces tab and they revoked my Green Beret. That was my rock bottom. But see, the difference between my rock bottom and my perceived rock bottom is I had the skill set and the tools and the knowledge to handle that. And these are the three things that I did to overcome that is perception shifting. That is something that I know I did, and I'll tell you how I did it. But also I know that parents can do that as well. The way I utilize perception shifting is when they informed me that my Green Beret was no longer, I was no longer a Green Beret, I immediately changed my perception. I said to myself and I said to my command, this Green Beret doesn't define who I am, what I've accomplished, or what I will accomplish. But I didn't stop there. I vocalized it. I called a friend and I told him the same thing. I told him my beret doesn't define who I am, what I've accomplished, or what I will accomplish. So, as I was thinking about this coming on tonight, perception shifting, how I utilize perception shifting can be very easily transferred as to parents utilizing perception shifting. And if a loved one is struggling, yes, it is difficult. And I oftentimes throughout my addiction, my parents knew I was struggling, obviously, and they were hurting and they were in pain because loved ones want to help and they don't want other loved ones to feel that pain or be in that pain. So the way I envision parents utilizing perception shifting is that they know this disease is beatable. This is beatable. It's a long lasting, everyday effort, but it is beatable. But we have to have the right tools to beat it. We can't continue to do the same thing and expect different results. You know, during those 18 months of sobriety, I had no community. And that's odd, right? I was a college athlete, team. I was part of a big team on a special forces team. But when I tried to combat something as powerful as addiction, I tried to do it by myself. And a lot of individuals are stuck in that route. They don't have that community. They don't have that sense of being a part of something to overcome an obstacle. And overcoming addiction is extremely difficult, but it's not impossible. So that's how I use perception shifting. Secondly, I use growth through adversity. We go through adversity every single day, some small, some large, but it gives us a chance to evolve. As we overcome these small obstacles, we're able to attach confidence and courage to each time we overcome something. And again, thinking about this from the addict's mom side is if an individual, a loved one is struggling, but if they overcome something, let's highlight that. Let's let them know, hey, you've overcome something. You know, not every single day has to be, we always say in sessions, it doesn't have to be the Super Bowl. You getting out of bed, you brushing your teeth, those small little victories, if you start reinforcing and saying, hey, you did that today, good job, thank you for doing that, that individual now can attach that courage to facing adversity. Because with my addiction, getting out of bed was difficult. That seemed almost impossible at some days. So if an individual does do that, and they're recognized by that, that could give them a little bit more self-confidence. And lastly is accountability. I've always been accountable for what I chose to do. It was my choice to do that. But what I break down accountability into is two segments. When I ask someone to hold me accountable now, I'm specific. I'm very detailed. I give them the how I want them to approach me, when I want them to approach me, and why I'm asking them to hold me accountable. So when I am getting approached, right, human nature is when someone's holding you accountable, you're going to be defensive. I know when my parents talked to me about drugs or alcohol, my immediate go-to was on the defense. So if we can give these individuals a little bit more structure in how we're held accountable, they will receive it in a much better way. Secondly, on the second segment is asked to be held accountable, right? That is difficult. When you're holding someone accountable and sitting down with that individual and having those serious conversations, that is difficult. So if you have to do that, you only will learn through that, and you will learn how to respond when you're being held accountable. One of the things that I place a very high importance on right now is knowledge. Knowledge is very powerful. And what I left Treehouse Recovery with is that knowledge. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not an addict. All I was doing, I'm not going to give alcohol or drugs that power. I am not that, nor will I ever be that. What I did was I used alcohol and drugs to cope with something else. My pathways in my brain, my neurons, there was a strong path between pain, depression, anxiety, stress, and alcohol. That was my easy button. And every single time one of those things came up in my life, excuse me, that was the end state is I decided to drink. So as I look at addiction, I'm able to now look at it as, okay, I had unhealthy coping mechanisms. I'm not going to give the power of alcohol attached to my name. And then lastly, and I mentioned this a little bit, is how powerful community is. I remember I didn't want to hear from my parents about what I was doing wrong or what I was struggling with or that I was making poor decisions. That's difficult. And oftentimes, our loved ones, we feel the most comfortable and we say the nastiest things to our loved ones. I remember an individual said one day is, if I heard someone talk to my loved one as as badly as I talk to myself, there'd be confrontation. So when you're hearing it from a loved one, chances are they already know. But if we're able to get these individuals who are struggling into a community, into a peer setting where they can see or they can talk to other individuals, and those people can inform them, or those people can say, hey, you might want to get some help, or the way you're living your life is not the best. That may be more well received than coming from a loved one. Um, and I know I was quick. There's a lot more in depth of my story and how I battled alcoholism. But from what I wanted to provide is a baseline of how alcoholism really controlled my life. Um, but more importantly, I would like to open up for discussion, for some questions, so I can provide a perspective uh, to better help, potentially help each one of you. So I'll open it up for discussions.
All right. We do have a couple of questions, Ben. So you mentioned perception shifting. So for like the mom angle of this, do you mean for us to like lower our expectations? Does that is that the same thing or
No, I would never say to lower your expectations because we want the best for our loved ones, and we're always going to push our loved ones. Um, what I really want is, and again, I'm putting my shoes into my parents as, oh, my son's never going to overcome this. My son's struggling to use perception shifting to say, this is beatable. He can get through this.
okay,
Because it's
that
got to be very stressful, right? It has to be extremely stressful for a, parent to see their loved one struggling. Um, but if I can use perception shifting and know it's beatable, coupled with the knowledge I know, and I'm not talking about the knowledge of alcohol is bad. I'm talking about what's happening in my brain right now. What are the neuro pathways? What are the chemicals being released when my son, my daughter consumes a drug or drinks alcohol? What are those? How can I emulate that? With that knowledge, I can better assist those loved ones.
excellent. Thank you. So Betsy says, thank you for your service. Her son is a Marine vet and served in Afghanistan, saw his friends killed. His friends have committed suicide and he has PTSD. He's never been an addict. My fear is he's drinking more, especially with, she lives in Colorado, with Colorado teams in the playoffs, and getting services from the VA is nearly impossible. He did a virtual therapy, but no one knows for how long. I've brought my concerns up. He insists he's fine. His sister has been in addiction for 14 years, so he knows a lot about it. Any suggestions?
Well, Betsy, thank you. Yes, I do. First off, uh, I've lost a lot of friends, just like your son, but I lost more to suicide.
Mhm.
I've lost more friends to suicide coming home than at war, and it's difficult. And the only way to combat that is providing resources to your son. My suggestion is with PTSD and alcoholism and being a vet, I only would open up to other vets. It's something to be said about that bond that we have had. We've been over there, we understand, and I can relate to him, and the numerous amount of vets who work for TreeHouse Recovery can do the same. So, yes, he probably understands. He knows that it is difficult, and he knows that since his sister is struggling as well, that it's possible that he is struggling. But he has that neuro pathway, right? We already know that that's his easy button. when stress, when PTSD moments come up, when thoughts, he immediately hits that easy button because he's able to escape. Alcohol for me was able to escape sometimes from my thoughts of what happened overseas. The biggest thing, and I understand the VA program, and I wish I was king for a day because I would fix that. Um, there are resources, there are nonprofit groups, or sorry, nonprofit organizations out there that help facilitate getting that vet who struggles with PTSD and substance abuse the resources he deserves. I work with a good amount of them, and they understand the bureaucracy of the VA. We can't change it. We have to work and adapt through it. But oftentimes, there's resources out there that will help guide your son through that. My last suggestion is to allow someone to call him, someone that has the same similar experiences that he had. Because once I hear from another vet that we also served and we also went through, the hardships, instant credibility. And once you have that credibility and the respect for one another, now I can be honest with you. And now I can hear the hard truth that he may need to hear.
Sounds kind of like our group, actually, hearing from other moms that have been through the same situations. So,
Yes,
Ben, we
Al-Anon.
we really, yeah, basically, yeah. We really want to thank you for being here with us tonight. We appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Thank you so much for your service and carry on, son. You're
Thank you
awesome.
very much, Kim, and thank you everyone for having me. I really appreciate it.